Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. I would like to call the September 9th, 2024 Menomonee Falls Board of Education Annual Budget Hearing meeting to order. Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Mosho, was the meeting properly posted? Yes, it was. This is a School District of Menomonee Falls Board of Education Annual Budget Hearing Meeting. It is being held at the Menomonee Falls High School Auditorium at N80W14350 Titan Drive, Menomonee Falls, Wisconsin 53051. This meeting will be broadcasted by Falls Cable Access and can be viewed live on the Falls Cable Access YouTube channel. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit our website at www.fallsschools.org/board. Sitting to my far right is Ms. Caitlin Windler, Director of Finance and Operations. She will be giving the annual budget presentation, which will include key factors of the annual budget process, such as goals, planning, and highlights of the 2022 and 23 and 23 and 24 years. In addition, she'll be discussing the proposed 2023-2024 tax levy.
Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. This is our 24-25 budget hearing. My name is Caitlin Windler and I serve as our district's Director of Finance and Operations. There is a budget publication booklet that can be found on our annual meeting webpage, which is also found using the QR code on the handout as you walked in tonight. There are also a number of other links out on that page that we'll be referencing throughout the evening. Tonight's agenda is we'll take a look at our factors in this year's financial results. We'll look at a budget recap of 23-24 and then dive into 24-25's budget planning highlights, as well as the projected tax levy and mill rate. Kicking us off tonight is a clip of our new strategic plan. This is an important document that was built over many months with community, staff, and family input last year. We know this plan now is what our community expects, and this work is what we will be working on over the next 5 years. This work is divided into 4 different areas, and the goals are outlined under each. We will use this document as the driving force of our priorities, our decisions, and our budget moving forward. Tonight, during our annual meeting, Mr. Munoz will be spending some time going through this in more depth. In our finance division, one of our goals is to maintain a high level of transparency and accountability. Annually, we update our budget development calendar, so this is also found on our budget website, as well as in the packet on page 3 on the QR code tonight. The budget calendar is something we use as we work through the budget cycle, which is cyclical and really stays the same each year. This document is nice because it actually has dates during which the board will review and approve specific items. Another item on our website is our year at a glance calendar, which goes into more additional items that we do as both administrative team, and that our board finance committee and full board reviews each year. It's important to spend some time celebrating items that took place in the 23-24 fiscal year, so I'll take a few minutes to go through a couple of these key items now. We managed operations to end with a positive variance in the general fund in 23-24. We'll go through many of these key details later on in this presentation. In the 23-24 year, we retired our Fund 38, or non-referendum debt. School districts have to separate their accounting into different funds or categories, if you will. And so when we talk about our budget, Fund 10 is where the general operating things happen within our budget. Fund 38 is our non-referendum debt. When we have Fund 38 debt on our books, we have to take our tax levy and right off the top allocate dollars to our Fund 38 debt payments for that year's debt payments. And in retiring our Fund 38 debt, we no longer have to take some of those dollars and allocate them elsewhere. So all of those dollars that previously were going to Fund 38 debt payments are now staying within our general operating budget to basically freeing up dollars to support our 24-25 budget. In Fund 39, which is referendum debt, we did a defeasance last year of about $12 million, which results in a taxpayer savings of over $3.3 million. When we prepay this debt or defease the debt, basically we are reducing future interest payments. So this is the $3 million that is saved over the life of the debt. We also created and our board approved a Fund 46 last year, which is specifically for capital improvement investments. This is a fund that is funded from the district's own budget. So it's not new money, but it provides an avenue to plan for facilities projects. Our financial audit continues to be a clean audit opinion. We're currently still wrapping up the 23-24 year end, so all information regarding last year is presented as unaudited. You'll see that note a number of times. And it will be until our financial audit is wrapped up and finalized. So far, everything is going smoothly, and a shout out to our business office team and the strong team that we have that in all the work they do day in and day out that is able to present a clean audit opinion. And finally, our district continues to be exceeds expectations category on the DPI school report card. Another item to celebrate is the approved CE and REC expansion and the Riverside Facilities project that is happening without creating any new debt and will be completed while still managing the tax levy and mill rate. We are currently planning a project update that will be presented at the next board meeting, September 23rd, and our architects and construction management partners at EUA and BJS will be presenting project updates at that time.
It's important to note about the CE and REC project that is a community center that's being funded largely through several different budget moves, including the defeasance, in other words, the savings, and there won't be any debt payments this year. So this is something that's not creating any debt. So this project for the community isn't creating any debt, and we're essentially doing it with cash, right?
Another important aspect of our district that is worthy of celebration is our facilities department. This is a well-oiled machine, and this is a team that truly takes care of our facilities and really cares for them, and that's apparent in their work. Over the summer, there's ongoing maintenance and summer deep cleans, but also a number of big planned projects or capital improvement projects that take place. A number of these actually this year focused specifically at North Middle School, just the way that the calendar fell. We had a few roofing sections at North Middle School replaced. We had the North Middle School elevator replaced, all the components inside. Also, so it's new and shiny, but also the important parts behind it are new as well. And then the North Middle School chiller will provide air conditioning going forward to the middle school. Our current air conditioner unit is at end of life and actually has exceeded its lifespan. A couple safety and security items as well. The high school soccer stadium received a major upgrade to the soccer press box. Got a full renovation. It looks beautiful now, a new staircase. The old one was quite rickety, so no longer a safety issue for us. And now the building can function, the structure can function as it was intended with the concession stand and then also the windows on all the sides for announcing. We also invested in additional cameras at North Middle School and the high school, adding cameras to blind spots indoors and outdoors. And we upgraded to a new system that allows our capability district-wide for better access to cameras. Annually, our district invests $675,000 into our facilities projects. Our district for years has maintained a capital improvement plan, or we call that a CIP plan. The document is now public facing as it was brought to our board finance committee last year and our board approved it. We call it a living document because it does change and ebb and flow as we have different priorities come up and we get costs throughout the years and the months, as this document will be brought forward to our finance committee a number of times throughout the year. Moving into budget context and strategy. The state works on a biennial budget. So this means the state approves a 2-year budget. This is the budget that then drives our school district revenues. Historically, back in 1993, when revenue limits were created, per pupil increases were tied to inflation or consumer price index or CPI. When the recession hit in 2008, the state stopped funding schools with revenue increases at the rate of inflation and rather became a per pupil dollar amount that were increases within the revenue limit. In the last biennial budget, which was the 21-23 biennial budget, There were 2 years of $0 increases in a row. The legislature ultimately decided to freeze revenue as school districts received one-time COVID relief funding. That funding is called ESSER, or Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds, and last year, 23-24, was our last year of ESSER funding. So we are now in the second year of the 2023-25 state biennial budget, where the revenue limit formula is increasing by $325 per pupil in each year of the biennial budget. As we budget, we do so intentionally, conservatively, and yet are realistic. It's very important to me in the budget process that we are accurate because we don't want to be too conservative and then all of a sudden at the end of the year we have a giant surplus and we cut a bunch of things along the way. That's not ideal for our students or for our staff and how our school district should run. So I always work to, my ultimate personal goal is to be accurate, so conservative yet realistic. And we always plan with the long term in mind, not just 1 year ahead, but always looking into the future, multiple years out.
And that ESSER funding, just to help, acronyms can be difficult, but the ESSER funding was that COVID era funding that came from the federal government. For an example, we spent over $500,000 of that ESSER funding last year on curriculum resources. We'll come to that in a presentation in the meeting just following this one.
Previous control strategies that we've put in place have resulted in significant savings over time, which have put us in a strong budget position that we're in. So I'll go through some of those key pieces next. And I couldn't address the budget strategy without my favorite phrase: we can do anything, but we can't do everything. Functioning under the state-imposed revenue limits, our revenue is naturally limited. We're working through the impacts of inflation just like everybody else, and we are in a place where we can do anything, but we can't do everything, and we need to prioritize our needs. So that strategic plan will guide us going forward. So a couple major cost controls that have been implemented over time and have significantly impacted our financial position in a good way we'll go through in the next 2 slides here. So one of those is our debt defeasance and refinancing savings. Over $7 million saved for our taxpayers since 2006. Refinancing Fund 39 debt occurred in 2021, and we defeased $12 million of Fund 39 debt in May of 2024, which, as I mentioned, created over $3.3 million of interest savings by ultimately reducing the amount of interest payments that we have in the future. Last year, we also had our final Fund 38 debt payment. Again, that creates additional dollars, it frees up dollars for our Fund 10 for our general operating budget. We have reduced and eliminated the need to cash flow borrow, which is something that many school districts have to do. So school districts' expenses occur weekly and monthly. We have invoices that we pay weekly. We have payrolls that happen twice a month. And at the same time, school districts don't receive all of their revenue on July 1st when our fiscal year starts. And quite to the contrary, we actually receive our first large payment. We get our payments from property taxes mainly and state aid. Our first large payment doesn't happen until mid-January. So we're actually going through half of our fiscal year without receiving a significant amount of our revenue for the fiscal year, which is why it's important to maintain a fund balance that allows you to avoid short-term borrowing. When we short-term borrow, obviously there's an interest cost associated with that. So by having a fund balance that's large enough, we can avoid the need to short-term borrow and therefore eliminate the need to have an additional interest payment. Years ago, our district made the transition to partner schools, which created an incredibly efficient staffing model for our elementary schools. This allowed us to achieve our class size targets and reduce the number of sections needed at each grade level within our elementaries. We've maintained the tax levy with minimal fluctuations over the years, avoiding any undesired surprises or roller coastering. Once again, projecting a decrease in the mill rate, looking at the lowest mill rate our community has seen in the last 31 years when revenue limits began. We'll go through more of that information later. And energy cost savings over time have totaled over $9.6 million since 2001, which is credit due to our facilities team and the work they've done in that area creating efficiencies. Self-funding insurance is also a key piece in our financial position right now. Market trend year over year has been 10 to 15%, and we've managed to stay well below that. Actually, this is the 6th year in a row without any increases to our premiums, which is both a savings for our employees and as a school district when we're budgeting. So moving into a budget recap of 23-24, and then after this, we'll go into 24-25. So wrapping up last year, again, you'll see the word unaudited because our audit field work is still ongoing. We are projecting our year end as a positive variance of about $1.4 million. As part of the 23-24 budget, about 1.2 million of that, as part of the 24-25 budget, about 1.2 million of those funds will be spent in the form of carryover for a number of capital improvement projects. So at the end of the day, we anticipate, when all is said and done, to be about a net gain of approximately $200,000 to our fund balance, which is of course a large number, but is really only about 3% of our budget. So this is a strong place for us to end the fiscal year, especially considering what our fund balance is at. And then once our year wraps up, and we do this throughout the year, but especially when it wraps up, we do an analysis of exactly where our savings or additional revenue has been in that budget. And we saw a positive variance in a few areas that netted us this positive budget position, but mainly our interest from revenues in the high interest rate environment is where we saw that large variance to the good. This was, again, both due to the high interest rate environment, but also we had that cash on hand for the defeasance. We had to have the money in the bank in order to do that defeasance, so having that larger cash balance netted us this larger interest earnings in the 23-24 fiscal year.
And when you hear the word defeasance, we're prepaying past debt. So past referendum debt from years and years ago, a defeasance is prepaying it, and we have those interest savings over time. So it's a very positive financial move.
So this slide is our fund balance graph. Fund balance is made up of cash, but it's not entirely cash. It is our year-end equity, so it's our assets minus our liabilities. And this is a very healthy place for school districts to be in. It's important for us to have this because, as we've talked about, part of it is cash, and in order to avoid short-term borrowing for cash flow purposes, if our fund balance is high enough, we can do that. So we've managed our fund balance to be in a strong place. Right now we're projecting about 37%, and that allows us to avoid that short-term borrowing. Bond rating agencies also rate school districts, and best in class for school districts is about 25% fund balance. So we're sitting at 37%, and this contributes to our high fund balance contributes to our bond rating or credit rating, which is in the high grade. So this means if we do have to borrow funds, we can get those funds at a lower interest rate. We don't need to continue building this fund balance up right now because we're at a healthy point, but it is important for us to maintain a fund balance for the need, again, to avoid short-term borrowing, but also if something unexpected happens. For example, we had our chiller last year when we were going through the budgeting process, and inflation hit, and our chiller cost us a lot more than we initially planned. So having a fund balance for large capital needs that arise, or something like a bad year of health insurance, that's what the fund balance is for.
Yeah, the chiller at the middle school alone was over $1 million to replace it. So that's an example of a one-time expense, and that'll start to be installed October 1st.
So as I've mentioned, our school districts have to budget based on fund accounting. So that means our operations have to happen in different categories or buckets, if you will. We've talked a lot about a number of these funds, so I won't go through this whole list. Again, this PowerPoint is also on that QR code on our annual meeting webpage, but I'll point out a few key pieces that we haven't talked through yet. One of those is Fund 46, our long-term capital improvement trust fund. I did mention that we have a new fund created, so I'll just dig into that a little bit. This is a separate fund that is funded with school district dollars via a transfer from Fund 10, or our general operating budget, to Fund 46. So it's not new money, it's not additional levy dollars, it's money that is already within our budget that allows us to save for future capital projects. One stipulation of Fund 46 is that there is a one-time 5-year timer, which is very goofy, but it is the case. Politics along the way made this the stipulation for opening a Fund 46. So what that means is from the very first day that you fund your new Fund 46, which for us was in April of 2024, we can utilize those dollars 5 years later. Our board can at any time between now and then and after contribute dollars to Fund 46 from our Fund 10 budget. And it's essentially a long-term planning mechanism that we've created for ourselves down the road. So future boards will be able to, if they so choose, contribute money from Fund 10 to Fund 46. Right now we have $100 that got our 5-year timer going. So that we haven't really invested in that yet. That was just to get it created and started. And we can do that at any time if there's room in the budget or if our board decides to prioritize that.
Yep. The Fund 46 is like a rainy day fund, but for public entities and public schools. We can't use it for a couple of years, but it's going to be extremely beneficial when it is actionable, which is why we initiated it last year.
And then one other one I'll point out on this slide that we haven't talked through yet is Fund 73, which is Other Post-Employment Benefits, or OPEB Trust Fund. And the funds are held in this trust for future use. At this point, we've retired all of our retiree health benefits. So that means there's no longer a district cost for our retirees. We in the past have paid a portion of their premiums, retirees who have retired from the school district of Menomonee Falls, and the district no longer has any liability to pay for future retiree needs. Those funds, totaling $2.7 million, can be used for retiree benefits going forward. So this fall, we will be exploring the opportunities that we have to implement a retiree benefit with those one-time limited dollars.
And those dollars can only be used for post-employment benefits. They can't be shifted to another fund. That being said, it's an extremely positive thing for our staff, but it's something that's a process you have to work through with exterior companies and then obviously our internal staff as well.
Thank you. Moving into our 24-25 budget summary. Again, it's part of the electronic materials available through the QR code that you saw at the entrance when you walked in, or if you also just go out to our website, both on our budget page and our annual meeting page, there is a budget booklet linked that goes through much more in-depth in terms of numbers and details than we're talking through tonight. And again, that's the preliminary budget that the board approved in August. Specifically, the details of the budget that were approved are on page 4 of that budget packet. The budget, as I mentioned, is cyclical and repetitive every year. So at this point, we are obviously at our annual meeting in October. Our final factors within our budget are firmed up. We get those from our membership count, and then also factors from the state, which is our equalization aid and our equalized value of our property values. In the meantime, our preliminary budget uses assumptions for those factors, and then all those factors are firmed up mid-October, which then the board approves the final budget after that. And then you can see our next year's budget starts immediately following in November with updating enrollment projections and the budget forecast. A couple highlights from the 24-25 budget. In terms of compensation, all positions received an increase ranging from 2% to 4.12%. We've increased our teaching staff by over 4 FTE or full-time equivalents. We now have 2 associate principals of the middle school and 2 associate principals across all 4 of our elementaries. I think I've talked about Fund 38 ad nauseum, so I'll highlight how Funds 39 and Funds 80 work together in tandem this year to fund our CE and REC project. So our Fund 39 defeasance basically created a holiday for 24-25 Fund 39 levy. So that was intentional planning to create levy capacity for Fund 80. Then we now have increased the Fund 80 levy, which will create that room to fund the CE and REC expansion project over the next 2 years, basically paying cash for the project and not creating any new debt to fund that project. Breaking down our revenues, the majority of our revenue comes from state and local sources. So to tie this to the big picture of how school districts are funded, our revenue limit formula or calculation tells us how much revenue as a school district we will receive from property taxes and state aid. In mid-October, the state then tells us how much aid we will be receiving. So we take our total revenue limit calculation, subtract out that aid, and that is the property tax levy for our general operating budget. Moving into expenditures. The majority of our expenditures are salaries and benefits. This is very common across school districts in the state of Wisconsin. And oddly enough, this pie graph is almost exactly the same as it was last year. So 70% of our overall budget goes to fund salaries and benefits, and then smaller portion is purchase services, which includes transportation and also our open enrollment out expense. So when students live here and they go elsewhere, we have an open enrollment out expense. When they live elsewhere and attend our schools, we have an open enrollment in revenue. Our overall expenditures, so this is all the funds. When I keep talking about Fund 10, Special Ed Fund is Fund 27, Community Services Fund 80. This is how they break down within our overall budget. So the majority of our operations, all of our operations within our general operating budget happen in Fund 10, and that is the largest portion of our activity. So Fund 10 is 73% of our overall expenditures. Next highest is Special Ed at 13%, and then this year Community Services 10%. Normally it's a smaller portion of the pie graph, but that's because we are funding $5 million of our CE and REC expansion project from the 24-25 tax levy. The tax levy is comprised of revenue for a few different funds, as I've mentioned. So the majority, again, is our general fund. And the general fund levy is most impacted by state aid. So if state aid goes up, it doesn't mean we get more money. It just means that our tax levy goes down and vice versa. Again, this year, the Fund 39 levy is replaced by a larger Fund 80 portion for the CE and REC project. So normally you're seeing a Fund 39 sliver in there. This year, that's removed, and the Fund 80 Community Service Fund levy is larger. This graph shows the property tax levy trend over the last 2 years and then our projected 24-25 levy. So again, bringing it back to the 20,000 foot view of school finance, we use the revenue limit formula to calculate our total revenue. And then we subtract out our aid. We're left with the property tax levy for our general fund and any non-referendum debt, which we have now retired. The projected levy is continuing to fluctuate only minimally and still sits under the $40 million mark where it has the last handful of years. You'll notice the colors in that graph too are now just the purple and the blue. So the red in the past was the debt service fund. So this is just a different graph showing how our debt service fund has now been eliminated for just the 24-25 year. And that purple, or the community service fund, is larger to fund the CE and REC project. This page is also in the budget booklet, and it shows our overall calculation of the property tax levy and the tax mill rate. So the total tax levy is projected to increase by approximately 2% to $39.3 million. We then take the total tax levy and divide it amongst the total equalized property value in our school district. This gives us our tax mill rate for every $1,000 of property value. The tax mill rate is also projected to decrease by almost 1.6% from $691 to $680. Again, the budget is not finalized, so this is our best projections at this point in time. This is our preliminary budget, preliminary tax levy, and preliminary mill rate. In October, when we get our final budget factors, that's when we are able to bring forward the final tax levy and tax mill rate. This includes the total equalized values of our district. So if this equalized value number increases at a greater rate than 4%, which is what we're using in our projections, that would bring the mill rate down farther.
So big picture, the mill rate is going down. We have $3.3 million in interest savings, and we're creating no new debt while building a $9 million facility for the community.
This next graph, this couple graphs here then show both the mill rate history as well as the tax levy history. You can see on the left, we used an average home of $310,000. That's the median home value in Waukesha County. So we just take that tax mill rate and multiply it by the home value to show what the mill rate means on the $310,000 home. And then the slide on the graph on the right, you're seeing the total tax levy in blue overlaid with our tax mill rate. So you can see what the total tax levy is doing, and then the mill rate is dropping. So again, the total tax levy, a slight increase, about 2% increase from the prior year, mainly steady overall, and that mill rate continues to drop because property values have continued to rise. So the slide always provides hopefully clarification to a confusing topic, but equalized versus assessed is a confusing topic. And it is so because school districts are required to do something different than municipalities. Per the state statutes, we are required as school districts to use equalized property values provided by the Department of Revenue using fair market values. We then give our levies to the municipalities, and they're required to take their levies and divide it amongst the assessed values. So it doesn't correlate, it doesn't equal. We all know that recently our home values have gone up, and many of them have been significant. Over the last 3 years, actually, Isabella, I'm gonna go back to this slide. Right above that, where the square is, you can see percent change from previous year. That's how our equalized property value as a whole has increased over the last few years. So we're seeing double-digit increases for 3 years in a row. We're projecting 4%. We do project that we will slow, so that's why we have the 4% in there. Prior to the 21-22 year, we were at single digits. I believe it was about 4%. So at some point, property values will slow, and I'll show in the next slide, when we actually look at our property tax bill, why we are looking at likely that slowing percentage. Okay, so to break things down in actual tangible ways for our property taxpayers, we're going to look at an actual tax bill. So this is from our Waukesha County tax website. So I just pulled a property in Menomonee Falls from the year that's ending, or from last year, 2023. And I'll break down the different parts that we're seeing within the tax bill. So in pink here, you're seeing both the assessed value for that property and the estimated fair market value for that property. There's also an assessment ratio. So the municipalities are charged with maintaining a ratio of a certain percentage. If I pulled the same property from a couple years ago, the percentage, that assessment ratio was in the 70s. It has to be higher than that per state statutes. That's part of the municipality's role. So what we've experienced in the last few years is reassessments. So likely you might have experienced your assessed value increasing. That assessment ratio now, for this property, for example, is now almost 98%. So that simply is assessed value of $409,300 divided by the estimated fair market value of $419,600. Also on this tax bill, you're seeing 4 different taxing entities in blue. So if you live in Menomonee Falls, you will see the County of Waukesha, you'll see the Village of Menomonee Falls, you'll see Waukesha County Technical College, and then Menomonee Falls 3437 is the school district. So 3437 is our agency ID with the state. That line represents the school district. You may also see a garbage and recycling fee as well. There are 2 parts that actually matter or correlate to the school district. So the first is that Menomonee Falls 3437. That is the portion of a homeowner's tax bill that is from the school district's levy. And then there's also a school levy tax credit. Such a tongue twister, so I'll probably mix it up. The school levy tax credit is then subtracted from the total. So that then is what is attributed to the school district from that homeowner. To complicate matters, of course, on an already complicated subject, is with another item within the state's biennial budget is a category of funds for the school levy tax credit. Last year, that bucket of funds increased dramatically from the prior years. So if you looked at your prior 2 tax bills, you would have seen this line increase. This year, it's going to increase again, but by a much smaller amount. So I'll go through an example where kind of you can show like the formula of actually if you wanted to calculate or project your next property tax bill, you can utilize this formula. So it's fair market value times our mill rate minus that school levy tax credit, and that would equal your estimated school-based portion of your property tax bill. So in order to do this, you would take a look at your fair market value from the prior year, and you could increase it by any percentage you want. The greater the percentage, so obviously the more conservative your calculation would be. And then take your projected mill rate for the school district of Menomonee Falls for next year. So we've talked about a 680 mill rate projection. So scoot the decimal over 2 places to the left. And we are seeing that 419,600 times 0.0068. Subtract out that school levy tax credit. Again, if you wanted to be conservative in your estimate, you could maintain that amount. It is likely to increase by a small amount, but much smaller than it had in the prior year. And that would equate to your projected tax bill for the school portion of your tax bill for the coming tax year. So to wrap up, I promise 2 more slides and then I'm done. Some key takeaways from what we talked through tonight. We plan cautiously and resourcefully when we plan our budget. State funding has been lower than inflationary increases on average over the current and the last biennial budgets. And a result of these factors is an annual budget gap that we work to close each year. We continue to be intentional and conservative in projecting both future revenues and expenditures. We utilize a long-term budget planning approach, never thinking just 1 year at a time, but always looking multiple years out. We've realized significant financial benefits of previous cost control strategies, and we will continue to seek opportunities to create efficiencies and operations to control costs. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Windler. Now is for invitations or statements and questions from the audience. Please step up to the podium and identify yourself by giving your name, address, and the nature of the budget topic to be discussed. This is a public hearing, and comments will be limited to topics regarding only the annual budget, and comments will be limited to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. Jefferson Davis, West 169 North 8630 Sheridan Drive. And there's like 6 or 7 quick questions that only respond needing a numerical response or yes or no. And Madam Windler, you did a very nice job. Thank you. With the cash on hand, the 22 million in the fund account, is that where you're getting the money from so you don't have to borrow short term? Thank you. Do we know how many students we have in the school district?
I have the number from today.
Bless your heart.
Today, 3869.
Okay, and is that on a trend like this?
It's slightly declining from the prior year.
Thank
and
you.
I'll just say too on that note, our pupil count, so we have 2 pupil counts
Right.
during the year. Our first one is the 3rd Friday in September. So this is as of today, but we always compare apples to apples, 3rd Friday to 3rd Friday from one year to the next. So I'm not comparing apples to apples yet when I say it's declining because I'm using last year's 3rd Friday.
Is she chewing up my 2 minutes? Just kidding. I'm just teasing you. Do we know how many, I know this is crazy. Do we know how many employees we have district-wide? Just a number?
Our payroll week to week is payroll is approximately 600.
600, thank you. Fund 46 for the future, that's a new fund that we're creating so you don't have to borrow money for capital improvement?
Yeah, that's a new fund, and we fund it internally from our own dollars, so there's no
borrowing costs, no interest.
no borrowing, no new expense.
That'll keep Jennifer Grant happy. Okay, with the self-funding of insurance, do we do that with a third-party administrator, or do you do that in-house?
We do use a 3rd party administrator.
And I don't need to know who it is. Yeah, they don't do it for free though, right?
Correct.
Right, but you've saved a ton of money, haven't you?
I would say is our biggest driver in our savings within our budget.
Yeah, Act 10 wasn't too bad after all. Okay, the interest earnings, $1,055,000. Where does that go to? Does that go in that cash fund thing of 22 million?
Yep, and so,
Yeehaw.
yes.
Who?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, and then Superintendent Munoz, first of all, thank you. Thank you for being here. You know, we came here a year or 2 ago, and people were not afraid that you weren't going to do a good job. They were afraid you were going to do a great job. And in my opinion, I think the people sitting here, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
And I think I have 2 more quickies. And thank you for being in the community too. I see you all over. You're something else. Even at Quick Trip, we're buying lunch together.
Hey, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for that record, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Prepaying the debt. So thank you for doing that and saving us $3.3 million. Where did we get the money to retire that debt early?
So in our previous, I'm going to go to a slide. Is it health story? This one. Thank you. The red piece in this slide is our tax levy.
Yep.
The red piece is specifically
The
our
debt
debt
service,
service fund.
yeah.
So over time, we've had a little bit more in that debt service fund in order to avoid the roller coastering of our levy.
Right.
A little bit above and beyond our actual debt payments that were owed that year.
Okay. And then the retiree health fund where you're fully satisfied in 2021, but going forward, I heard the number of 2.7 million.
2.7 million.
That's Fund 73. It's a post-employment benefit fund.
And you just do that through negotiations with the staff and the board and?
No, we're going to we'll have an external vendor. There's a process. I've done it in a previous district, but it's very positive for our staff.
It's all I care. I totally.
That's where the money has to go.
I totally trust you. And then the last thing is Jason's here from the Community Rec Department. You're giving that guy $5 million on Noah.
Actually, it's more like 9 million.
Whatever. Yeah. Why not give him 20? What the heck? So in this slide, Director Windler, so the $6,019,000 includes the $5 million that you talked about earlier?
Yes, it includes the $5 million.
So through just simple math from my public school education, so his budget's about $1,019,000, give or take?
No, because
No.
they're not funded just from the tax levy. So
Got it.
a
Oh,
portion
there's
of their-
fees, of course. Yeah,
Yep.
having been in that position, I should have known that. I think that is it. Thank you for being
Thank you
so
very
kind.
much.
And thank you for all the board members. We supported all of you and will continue supporting you.
Are there any other questions, comments at all?
I have a question. Caitlin, well, one thing to clarify too, or not clarify, to add on. So for Fund 46, we replaced the chiller now, like it replacing future chillers. I believe we need quite a few possibly down the road. That would be something that would be in that like Fund 46, correct?
Yes, yep. Any capital improvement projects that are on our CIP plan, so that plan that our board approved, anything that's on there, we can use Fund 46 dollars
And
for.
hopefully that timing is just right. with
Right.
funds. The other question I have is, I read an article this summer about MPS and their referendum and their aid and how it could be affecting aid to potentially 357 of the state's school districts. How does that factor in?
That's a good question. So we don't know yet the result of that. They're also still working through that on MPS's side of things. But it goes back to equalization aid being a bucket and an equalized formula. So basically, if one district has more, another district has less. So we will know at some point how the MPS affects us, but we don't know that yet.
Well, the one article I read, I mean, this is all speculation, I guess, or calculation on the side, but it said about, at some schools, it won't affect them at all. Some, it affects them like almost $1 million, $750,000, and they quoted Menomonee Falls as 320,000. So how would that get factored in? Like,
Yeah, I remember, and I'll just jump in. I remember the article that you're referencing, and it's possible it could be that high, but it really has to do with how the formula plays out. Because they're the largest district in the state, when they pass a referendum, they're going to have more state aid go to them, which reduces the amount of money that's available for every other public school. Same thing in Racine or any other really large school district.
so, just a follow-up on referendums. So if any school has a referendum, in a sense, MPS is huge, but like, it all kind of adds up, right, towards what's affecting other school districts?
Okay, we are getting into
I'm
the
sorry.
equalized formula, but I'm happy to talk
But we'll
about
talk
it.
about it later.
So the reason why MPS is such a big factor
Yeah.
is because they are heavily funded from state aid. So the way the formula works is the more property poor a district is per pupil compared to the state average, the more aid they get. The more property rich a school district is compared to the state average on a per pupil basis, the less aid they get. MPS is heavily funded via state aid and less taxpayers' dollars. So our pie graph is 2/3 levy, 1/3 state aid, essentially. MPS is, I don't want to say a number, but it's much higher state aid than we receive. So that's why having the additional spendable dollars they have, they're getting more aid on that, which is just, again, reducing the pot for everybody else. When we talk about all of the school districts across the state of Wisconsin having different referenda for various reasons, they could be anywhere in the funding formula. There are districts who have no state aid and are entirely funded from the taxpayers. So, for example, Gibraltar, I believe, in like Door County area is very heavily funded, maybe entirely funded from taxpayers, not state aid. So it definitely depends. It's very much by school district where you fall in the formula, and then who's going to referenda for how much.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for your presentation. I appreciate all your hard work.
Anyone else? All right, we have come to the conclusion of the budget hearing and will convene directly into the annual board meeting. Good evening. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Nina Christensen, Board of Education President. The annual meeting of the School District of Menomonee Falls is called to order. Welcome to the September 9th, 2024 annual meeting taking place at the Menomonee Falls High School Auditorium located at N80 W14350 Titan Drive, Menomonee Falls, Wisconsin 53051. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Menomonee Falls Cable Access YouTube channel. A later viewing will be available on our board website page. Will you please join me in reciting the pledge? This meeting has been appropriately posted according to Wisconsin Statute 19.84 public notice. The annual meeting is statutorily required and provides district residents with an opportunity to critique the operation of the school district. It is also a time for the school board and administration to help the community focus on the achievements, needs, and future of the district. By statute, on or before November 1st, the school board has the duty to vote on a tax sufficient to operate and maintain the school district. If the annual meeting fails to do so, or if the annual meeting votes a tax that violates statutory revenue limits, the school board must lower the tax to bring it into compliance with the revenue limit. We take specific direction on running the annual meeting from statute from our attorneys and the annual school district meeting handbook published by the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. At the annual meeting, every resident has an equal vote. At this time, I'd like to invite school board members to please join their fellow electors in the audience. At this time, I would like to make some introductions. Joining me at the table to my immediate left is Legal Counsel Chrissy Hamill. To my right, Superintendent of Schools David Munoz, Board Member Jennifer Grant, Director of Finance and Operations Ms. Caitlin Windler, and Assistant to the Superintendent and Board Isabella Mosho. Ms. Mosho will be recording the minutes of the meeting and serving as the timekeeper. Non-resident administrators and staff are stationed in the auditorium and will serve as tellers to assist in the voting.
At this point, I'll open nominations for a chairperson to conduct the annual meeting. Are there any nominations?
Hi, my name is Chris Stuland. I'm a resident of Menomonee Falls. My address is N77 W17161 Overlook Trail, Menomonee Falls. I nominate Nina Christensen to be the chairperson of this annual meeting.
Are there any other nominations? Second time. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? I have to ask 3 times. Since there are no further nominations, and if there are no objections, nominations are closed. We have a motion to have Dr. Christensen serve as the chairperson for the annual meeting, and a second. Is there a second?
My name is Sarah Wren. Address is W170N7712 Trails End Court, and I second.
So we have a second and as the chairperson for tonight's meeting. All those who have in favor, please raise your hand. You can put your hand down. All those opposed, please raise your hand. I see none raised. The motion passes, and Dr. Christensen is elected chairperson for the meeting.
Thank you very much. I will first begin by giving an overview of the agenda and rules of the annual meeting. Upon entering the auditorium, you should have received handouts containing a QR code to access the meeting agendas, a budget hearing booklet with the treasurer's reports, and an information sheet detailing tonight's rules of order. Paper copies are available if you do not have a smartphone or QR code access. To be a qualified voter at the annual meeting, you must be a resident of Menomonee Falls School District for at least 20 days prior to today, September 9th, 2024. You must also be a U.S. citizen and at least 18 years of age. This meeting will be conducted according to Robert's Rules of Order. Separate seating may be designated for residents and non-residents. Individuals wishing to make a motion must indicate this by raising their hand and waiting to be recognized by the chairperson. When recognized, please move to the microphone in the aisle, state your name and address prior to making the motion. A second to the motion can come from any seated elector in the audience. Tonight's voting will be conducted first by a show of hand vote or a standing vote for the agenda's major items. If a show of hand vote is inconclusive, we will resort to a standing vote. Only district residents may speak, vote, and make motions. Any elector has a right to challenge the residency of someone attempting to vote. If this happens, a process outlined by statute will be implemented. Residents wishing to debate or speak to a motion may be asked to come to the microphone, state your name and address, and proceed. The time limit for the speaker is 2 minutes per person and shall not exceed 1 hour. An elector may speak once on any given motion. So on to the rules of order. Do I have a motion to approve the rules of order for the annual meeting as distributed?
Thank you. Madam Chair, Jefferson Davis, West 169, North 8630, Sheridan Drive. I make a motion that we approve the rules of order as posted.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
There is a motion and a second to approve the rules of order for the annual meeting. Is there any discussion at all? Anything? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Please put your hand down. Those opposed, please raise your hand. No hands. The motion passes and the rules of order are approved. Next is a motion to approve the agenda for the annual meeting as distributed.
I got to beat Superintendent Munoz to the punch here. So, Madam Chair, I make a motion, Jefferson Davis, West 169, North 8630, Sheridan Drive, Menomonee Falls. I make a motion that we approve the agenda as posted.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. There is a motion and a second to approve the agenda for the annual meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Please put your hand down. Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your hand. All right, the motion passes and the agenda is approved. Next, our superintendent of schools, Mr. David Munoz, will provide highlights regarding the school district of Menomonee Falls.
Why don't we start out with, while they're pulling the slides up there, I think they'll be up there in a second. Why don't we start with a round of applause for Mrs. Windler? She and her department, they're very gifted. We're very blessed to have her and her team. leading the money piece for all of us. So we're in a very positive position. I'm not going to spend much time on that because she's so very good on it. I will reference it, but we are in an outstanding financial position. I also want to start on the second slide with another round of applause for our board members. Why don't we give them a quick round of applause? That is a current picture. We took that at graduation. Real excited about that picture. I think that's the good picture, right? We had a couple that that were a little, oh gosh, wait, their eyes were closed, their eyes were open, that kind of thing. So it's exciting to work with the board. We have a lot accomplished. We're going to jump into some of the big pieces with the strategic plan. You can jump to the next slide. But before we get to the strategic plan, all the directors that are here, why don't you step up? I see most there's a lot of light there, but several are standing in back. Let's give them a round of applause right back over here. So they're listed here. I know Ms. Scopter is checking people in outside. I saw Chris Carlton. I can see Chris Carlton back there. Jason is here, Jefferson, so yep, he's still there. He's going to do a great job. He does a great job with his team. Nikki's back here in school nutrition, taking care of our students and feeding all of our students. Troy's back there, Director of Technology. Mr. Halverson, why don't you stand up again, sir? For those that don't know Mr. Halverson, why don't you step forward a little bit, sir? You're new to the district here. So those that don't know Mr. Halverson, he's the Director of Student Support Services. He's in charge of school safety, along with any and all things to do with students, not just student safety, but student discipline and all these sorts of things. He's got over 25 years in education. We're excited to have him on board. He's also an Army veteran, so we do appreciate that, and thank you for that. Other staff, I know Alec wasn't able to be here tonight. Thank you, Mr. Halverson. Alec Just is Director of Special Education. I don't believe he's here tonight, but I do have a lot of lights kind of shine right on me, but if he is, Alec is great. He was hired internally. He's been working with us for several years, and now he's Director of Special Education. I want to thank Isabella. You should give her a round of applause. So, she's worked in the district for several years, but she is only a few months on this job, and she's really doing an amazing job as board secretary and executive assistant to me. I appreciate it. Her abilities and her skill allow me to get out in the buildings and do a lot more things in the community, which I do appreciate. So thank you. Next slide, the strategic plan. We're going to reference strategic plan, and I only have 14 slides left, right? So not nearly as many as the business slides, but she was great. I mean, that was fast, and it was thorough and very detailed. Our strategic plan approved by the community, I was just really excited. I saw many of you come out into a lot of our listening sessions, and we had feedback. This was the result. And I'm going to get into a couple of examples where we're building this strategic plan, and we've already actioning some things going forward. So it's one thing to see a document like this, our students, our parents, our employees, and our finances, and you're like, okay, but what does that mean on a daily basis? We're going to actually dig into that with a couple of examples so you can see some things that we've started and then where we're going with that strategic plan. And that fits very nicely with this next slide about professionalism. I just have to look back. Yep, we're good. Serving excellence through all our guiding principles. This already existed in the district, and that's going to stay part of things. The next slide, when we started with all staff, we had a presentation called Together is Better. And we were really excited about it. We were able to bring in an expert from around the state. His name's Damian LaCroix. He used to be superintendent in the Howard Suamico School District. We'll be doing a book study with staff about this, but it's really was an excellent start. Not just because I say so, he was doing a presentation and getting live feedback during the presentation, and the vast majority of the live feedback from our staff based on that presentation, it was very aligned, it was very specific, and it was very good, and we're going to get into some of the reasons why. One more slide about the strategic plan before I jump into a few examples for you, just to remind you that I was going to do that. And then there should be a slide that says next steps. So next steps talks about, and I won't read it word for word, but the gist of it is, we've built this strategic plan, now what are we going to do? Where are we going with this plan? So right now, we're establishing and finalizing action steps and connected into school goals and to all of our scorecards in our building. What's a scorecard? A scorecard is how we measure that we're doing the things that we've told you we're going to do, right? And we'll get into a few examples of that. And we're going to be bringing those things to the school board and the community multiple times a year to show you that, hey, we said we're going to do this, and now we're showing you how we're doing it. And I'll give you a few examples here in a few slides. So one example is, I just on the next slide, I should say our students at the top. Yep, there we go. So I just introduced you to Mr. Halverson over there. School safety continues to be our first priority. And you can see that in the news last week, right? It is a priority for us. And I'll start at the bottom. I'm very appreciative of the school board that when I asked them to add an additional police officer to go from 2 to 3, they did it quickly. So we believe in our police department. We went from 2 to 3, and now we have 3 full-time officers in our buildings at all times. So we're excited about that. Last year, when I came to the board as a new superintendent, and I said we need over $200,000 in safety spending, they did it because it was critical. And that was behind the scenes sort of work. What are we doing this year? Mr. Halverson is a safety expert, in and out of education. We've been doing presentations as recently as this morning, and I'll be in another one tomorrow. We've been in multiple buildings going through what things do we want to change in this district. We want to be proactive with how we're keeping students and staff safe on a daily basis. This is our first job, right? Education is second, safety is first. We're going through common announcements, common safety drills, something called Speak Up, Speak Out. You can see all of this on our website. A program called Run, Hide, Fight. And what that means, it's unfortunate that we have to have these things systemized, but we do. Now, lots of thanks to Mr. Halverson for getting these things detailed and organized this summer. He just started July 1. We're already rolling out a lot of these changes as we go. Next slide. While we have spent a good amount of money on school safety and improvements, we've spent a lot more on curriculum resources. You'll see it on this slide that talks about continuous improvement. So we're moving and continuing our process of continuous improvement by focusing on our teams. You're like, well, what were we doing last year? We were focusing on continuous improvement for the individual teacher perspectives. Now we've purchased over $1 million in curriculum resources for English and social studies. That's already done. I had mentioned that it was $563,000 from that federal ESSER funds. We decided to use it on curriculum, a good chunk of it. So some of the things that I'll get into in a future slides are, it's one thing to purchase the curriculum, now the teams are starting to implement these new curriculums throughout the district. So we're excited about that work because it's core work. Obviously safety is our first concern, but learning, these core learning pieces are right there as a next thing. Other pieces. I did throw some data up here, but I made sure to double check it with Mrs. Windler over there because she's an absolute expert. But this is an important point. This came up in our strategic plan. I see some members of the steering committee sitting out in the crowd. We talked about open enrollment out. In other words, students who live in this district but choose to go to the other districts. This is in the plan. So this is an example of these. This is the data about students over the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years and what we're projecting. 110, 89, 72, 32, and 29. More students coming in that were going out. This year we're projecting even, but I think it was a very forward-looking piece of the strategic plan to say, let's look at those that are leaving, ask them why, and see what we can build to keep them here. And I put on there virtual school. Well, we don't have a virtual school. We're a high-performing district, exceeds expectation, and we actually don't have a full virtual school. It's something we're looking into. I'm not saying we're absolutely going to do it, but that's one thing. What are you doing to attract students? Because we are losing students to some full-time virtual schools. So that's an important point. Our employees, this next slide, this is a great data point. Double check these with our HR director. I'm sure Leah's sitting out there still checking IDs. Really appreciate her for doing that. But one of the big changes for employee retention, we had a rough year last year, 13.8%. wasn't a great piece, but this year we just got the numbers 4.8%, and if you don't count retirements, 3.8%. What that means is that over 95% of our staff came back for the 24-25 school year, and we're excited about that. That's great. That's awesome. That is something we're going to continue to focus on, though. We're not just going to say, okay, we've done it. No, that's not something you've always just done. When we talked about Fund 73 and post-employment benefits, that's a critical thing to lock in for our staff, is what are we doing in that sort of environment to be more competitive? You know, and obviously there's salary as well. We're going to be looking at what's called stay interviews. You can see that listed in that next line item. We've already started the stay interviews, and we're asking staff, okay, you're here, tell us the good things, tell us the bad things, and what can we do to continue to have that number be that good over multiple years? Because obviously it wasn't the year before. Next slide. It's kind of a happy slide, right? Those are our new staff. Not nearly as many this year. And there's administrators in there. I see at least 3 administrators in there, teachers, food service, custodians, so all number of different educators that it takes, like over 600 educators in the district. These were the new staff first week that they had come in. I'm glad they were able to grab that picture, whoever had done that. It wasn't me, but yep, Mr. Halverson. Thanks for grabbing that picture, sir. A couple things about finances, and I won't spend a lot of time on this next slide because you already got 30-some slides of absolute expertise with respect to our finances and facilities. But one thing that came up in the strategic plan that we're going to be pushing on is we have lots of property in the district that we don't have any buildings on. 3 big pieces of property, one on Menomonee Avenue, TJ's, and Hiawatha. And we have it strictly written in the strategic plan, like what are we going to do with that land? So the plan in the next couple years is to actually have a plan to sell it, build something on it, or maybe sell it to a developer and have them build houses on it. I mean, we have to move forward with this. I'm not suggesting a solution yet because the board hasn't even entertained this yet, but this is an exciting piece, right? So the positive financial outlook is clear. I think the budget presentation should have already made that clear. And those last few slides, and I just have a couple left, they really wrap in and give it examples from each one of these buckets. So our students, our parents, our families, our employees, and our finances and facilities. Those were just a couple of quick examples of where a strategic plan that a lot of you helped develop is now going to be moving forward in action. And it's our job to bring those examples of how we're succeeding with that, or maybe not achieving as high as we would like with that plan as we move forward the next year. So the school experience, there's only a couple slides left. And the school experience slides, there's 3 of them. And I'll reference a few points, and you can see this on our website. So if you go to the school district website and you look for the school experience and you look for elementary school, middle school, and high school, you'll get these next 3 slides word for word, just like you see them here. So the first slide, the elementary schools. So we have partner schools. So we have multiple elementaries broken into partner schools at this time. So our 4K to 2nd, and that's listed there in 3rd to 5th. So Shady Lane and Valley View and Ben Franklin attached to Riverside, meaning partner schools. So we're excited about the way that is right now. But right now, one of the big things is all of their PTOs, their wealth of events, a lot of fundraisers, a lot of activity, a lot of positive activism for the students. And you can see that listed there. Focused on math, reading, behavior intervention, and special education. I know I mentioned special education only a little bit, but we have a wonderful special education department for those students with special needs. And we're excited to continue that and continue leaning into that. The middle school experience, a couple of things that I'll reference here in blue. Future Business Leaders of America. It is an outstanding chapter, very active, and that's wonderful in a community that's so bound in the business world. We do have an absolutely wonderful auditorium there as well that's used as much by the community at the middle school, which is why we're here, and as it is by our school district. So there's several other items. The 6th grade transition program, I'll mention that. They reference it here, where everybody belongs and about 6th grade students, a life at MS. I was there last week, first day of school on Tuesday at about 6:30 in the morning at the middle school. They start really early, right? For those that have had students at our middle school. But I was there about 6:45, and you have these upperclassmen, so 8th graders and 7th graders, that come in and they help the 6th graders feel welcome, they cheer for them, and it's just a wonderful start to that first day of school. So that's what that's talking about. They really did a great job with it, and a couple of them were even saying, Mr. Munoz, you came here just like you promised, the 5th graders, right at Riverside and Valley View. I said, yep, I'll be there, don't worry. So they did a great job. So a lot of things, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, we call it STEAM. So a lot of those career clusters are very prominent at the middle school. Last slide is about the high school experience. One thing on there, I'll just bring the money up right away. When it says students bank $233,000 in transcripted credits toward degrees, that means that students are earning college credit at our high school at the same time as high school credit. So mom and dad don't have to pay for that once they graduate, all right? So it's awesome, 130 advanced placement scholars that stand to earn more than $1.2 million in college credit. So you put all that sort of thing together, our high school is really pushing things forward in terms of school to work and careers and that sort of thing. Also, one of the differences between full online schools and our schools is we offer 75 varsity sports and extracurricular activity. 75. With advisors and students. That's just amazing. That's amazing, and really a shout out to all the staff and teachers who put so much effort into that. I just love this slide, and that does come from graduation right before. I won't flip back to the slide where, because this is the last slide. We'll end on this slide. There is one more, it just says engage and these sorts of things online. But I love this because this came from graduation. I think our friends at Falls Cable Access gave me this picture. If not, I really thank you guys because they're awesome. They had drones up taking pictures of other things as well. But this is a great shot of this year's, the seniors that just graduated. So it's a lot of fun to see them in a close-up shot because we do want every student to graduate and move on to, work or college or military, whatever they choose to do, and make sure that they're ready to do it. So in terms of the school district overall, I'm excited where we're at, but I'm also excited about the strategic plan that we've constructed and then how we're going to work it out over the next 3 to 5 years. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. That was a great presentation. Next is Jennifer Grant, Board Treasurer. She will now take a few moments to share the Treasurer's annual report.
Well, good evening. As President Christensen mentioned, I'm Jennifer Grant, and I am the Treasurer of the Menomonee Falls School Board. As we've noted many times this evening, Ms. Windler just gave us an excellent presentation recounting last year's financial highlights as well as a preliminary look at next year's budget. But annual meetings require that the treasurer give a report, and so I will give you a very, very brief report because I'm sure you don't all want to hear another rehash from last year. But it was a very good year, not only for our students, but for our district finances, and I'm proud to provide this required treasurer's report. We ended the 2023 fiscal year with a balanced budget in our general fund, adding approximately $1.4 million to our fund balance. Of this amount, $1.2 million is made up of funds assigned for continuing capital projects, equipment, and carryover into the 24-25 fiscal year, resulting in a net addition of approximately $200,000 being added to our fund balance. During the budget hearing, Ms. Windler shared revenue and expense figures in depth, as well as a summary of key highlights from last year. These figures can also be found in the last page of the budget packet referenced tonight and available anytime on our annual meeting webpage. In regards to the other funds that make up the school district's budget, we successfully paid off all of our Fund 38 debt, created a Fund 46 for future capital improvements, and defeased Fund 39 debt to support expansion in community education and recreation, all while managing the tax levy and mill rate. We continue to plan cautiously and resourcefully in the upcoming years, and we are always seeking opportunities to create efficiencies in operations to control costs. And that's the end of my report.
Board Member Grant, you may proceed in the audience. The next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the annual budget hearing and annual meeting from September 11th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Sarah Run. My address is W170 and 7712 Trails End Court in Menomonee Falls. I am a resident of the school district, and I move to approve the minutes from the September 11th, 2023 budget hearing and annual meeting.
Second.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the September 11th, 2023 annual budget hearing and annual meeting. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Please put your hand down. Those opposed, raise your hand. The motion is approved. The next item on our agenda is to authorize the school board to manage and/or dispose of school district property as needed. This does not include land or buildings, but smaller items, for example, trading in a truck or selling an old furniture or recycling computers. Do I have a motion?
Sarah Run, W170 and 7712 Trails End Court. I am a resident of the Menomonee Falls School District, and I move to authorize the school board to manage and/or dispose of school district property as needed.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to authorize the school board to manage or dispose of school property as needed. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your hand. Thank you. The motion is approved. Next item. The next item on the agenda is to set salaries and authorize the reimbursement of travel expenses for board members. Do I have a motion to set the salaries for board president and board members and to authorize travel reimbursements for board members?
Travis Langer, North 78, West 15383. I move to freeze the school board salaries at the current rate of $5,000 yearly for board members and $5,500 for the board president, and to authorize reimbursement to board members for travel expenses incurred in the fulfillment of board service.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Shelley Holzman, I second.
Thank you. There is a motion and a second to freeze school board members' salaries at the current rate of $5,000 yearly for members and $5,500 for the president, to authorize the reimbursement of board members of travel expenses incurred in the fulfillment of board service. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your hand. Thank you. The motion is approved. The next item on our agenda is to authorize the school board to lease suitable buildings for a period not exceeding 20 years with annual rentals fixed by the lease. Do I have a motion?
Travis Langer, North 78, West 15383, Rosewood Drive. I am a resident of the Menomonee Falls School District, and I move to authorize the district Board of Education to lease suitable buildings.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Shelley Holzman, I second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to authorize the school board to lease suitable buildings for a period not exceeding 20 years with annual rentals fixed by the lease. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your hand. The motion is approved. The next item on our agenda is to authorize the school board to lease school district sites not needed for school purpose.
I'm Shelley Holzman. I'm a resident of Menomonee Falls. My address is W132N6795, Westview Circle. I move to authorize the School District of Menomonee Falls Board of Education to lease sites not needed for school purposes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Travis Langer, second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to authorize the school board to lease school district sites not needed for school purposes. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. And those opposed, please raise your hand. The motion is approved. Yes, this is a big one, the budget hearing. The budget hearing was held prior to this meeting, where a thorough explanation of the proposed 2024-25 budget was presented. The Board of Education recommends that the tax levy for the 24-25 school year be approved at no greater than the maximum amount allowed, by which is anticipated to be approximately $33,319,802 for the general fund and $6,019,300 for the community service fund. Qualified electors in attendance at the annual meeting are asked to adopt a tax levy for the maintenance and exploration of the school district. This levy may be adjusted by the Board of Education prior to or on November 1st, 2024. The final levy is certified by the school district clerk to each municipal clerk. I am now looking for a resolution on the tax levy. Is there a motion?
Hello, my name is Jennifer Grant, and my address is N90 W20829 Scenic Drive, and I am a resident of Menomonee Falls School District. I move to approve the 2024-2025 tax levy at the maximum amount allowed by law as recommended by the school board.
Thank you, and do I have a second?
Chris Stuland, I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the 2024-25 tax levy at the maximum amount allowed by law as recommended by the school board. The floor is now open for discussion. Any discussion, any comments at all? Okay, it has been moved and seconded to approve the 2024-25 tax levy at the maximum amount allowed by law as recommended by the school board. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. And those opposed, please raise your hand. The 2024-25 tax levy is approved. Next item on the agenda is to give school board the authority to set a date and time for next year's annual meeting. Do I have a motion?
Hello, my name is Joel Wappert. I reside at N85 W17082 Lee Place, and I am a resident of the Menomonee Falls School District. I move to authorize the school board pursuant to Wisconsin Stat 120.08 subsection 1 to establish a date and time between May 15th and October 31st for the district's 2025 annual business meeting.
Do I have a second?
Travis Langer, second.
Thank you. There is a motion and a second to authorize the Board of Education to set a date and time for the 2025 annual meeting. Is there a discussion? Any discussion on it? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your hand. The motion is approved. And we've arrived at the end of the annual meeting. There being no further business, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Hello, I am Joel Wappert, and my address is N85 W17082 Lee Place. I am a resident of the School District of Menomonee Falls, and I gladly move to adjourn the 2024 annual business meeting.
Dave Bornels, I second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn the 2024 annual meeting. Is there any discussion at all? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those opposed, please raise your hand. The 2024 annual meeting of the School District of Menomonee Falls is adjourned, and we will convene for the regular Board of Education meeting in 5 minutes. Thank you for joining us for the budget hearing and the annual meeting. Good evening. I'd like to call the September 9th, 2024 Menomonee Falls Board of Education meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Mosho, was the meeting properly posted? Yes, it was. Thank you. This is a School District of Menomonee Falls Board of Education meeting. It is being held at Menomonee Falls High School Auditorium at N80W14350 Titan Drive, Menomonee Falls 53051. This meeting will be broadcast by Falls Cable Access and can be viewed live on the Falls Cable Access YouTube channel. To watch the recorded meeting, please visit our website at www.fallsschools.org/board. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education. Ms. Mosho, can you do roll call attendance, please?
Board Member Grant? Here. Board Member Stuland?
Here.
President Christensen?
Here.
Board Member Holzman?
Present.
Board Member Wren?
Here.
Board Member Wappert?
Here.
Board Member Langer?
Here.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve today's meeting agenda.
I'll make a motion.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right. Reports. Board of Education members?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I was able to attend the new hire orientation on August 20th, and it was just so nice to see all the new faces. Everyone's excited for the school year to start. And I wasn't able to attend, the full meeting, but I just think it's that energy that comes into the room. Everyone's, ready to go, setting up their classrooms, getting ready to welcome the students back. And it's always an exciting time of year, and we have a lot to be proud of and celebrate here at the Falls. And I just want to say, welcome back everyone, staff and students, and we're ready for a great year.
Any other board member?
Yeah, so obviously school has started. I did have the privilege to talk to a couple teachers already and a couple administrators, at our last couple football games at home. Although the game against Germantown did not go in our favor, I did have good report from teachers and admin that the first week went pretty well, which is really exciting. Talked to a couple athletes of the football team, and they're happy to be back in school, which is surprising to me. But no, everyone's great. And that, it's nice to see the community supporting our sports teams. It's nice to hear the good reports from staff and teachers that things are going well, especially with admin saying, things in the building are good. And, I just want to give a huge shout out to all of our staff, teachers and admin, and thank them publicly for their job well done.
Thank you. Anybody else? Superintendent Leo.
Yeah, start of school, a lot going on. Real excited about the open houses that I've attended, been multiple open houses, including Ben Franklin's. I was over at the middle school for a good period of time during one of their open houses. I think the high school has something later this week as well, is my understanding. There was a nice article on TMJ about Ben Franklin. I thought they did a really good job for those that saw it, talking about the first day of school. and I think it was just an extremely positive article, very good article by TMJ about that start of school. Professional development, there's been quite a bit. A lot of thanks to all the staff involved in helping our teachers at the start of the year with all these new curriculums that have come on board. Michelle Strupp in particular, but many others, working directly with Ms. Riebel. Training, I was there for a training at Valley View for a portion of the time where there was training on the new ELA curriculum. I was really impressed with the training that I saw, and was very appreciative, not just for the training, but the connection between that $1 million of curriculum spending, but also the direct training about how we're going to be utilizing that with our students. So I was there, several of us were there, they did a great job. So some external things, I think we had a really good kickoff with Mr. LaCroix and a few other things, a lot of positive comments. We're starting a book study off that. I have a copy for each of the board members here. So there's going to be a book study. I think I have a good number of staff throughout the district that we're going to start a book study with here in a couple of weeks. But we're excited to do that. It's very connected. When we were working on the presentation with Mr. LaCroix, it's not only connected to the book, but it's also connected to our strategic plan and where our district is at this time. So we're excited about that. School safety presentations, had one today, this morning with Mr. Halverson. We were over at Shady Lane bright and early this morning. I'll be over at Riverside tomorrow, and we're through multiple buildings. As I mentioned in one of the previous meetings, school safety is one of our primary concerns. A lot of thanks to Mr. Halverson's for the lift in terms of common documents like these emergency procedures that are now common throughout the district, along with many other aspects, that's just one, that are common throughout the district. So just like curriculum, when you have new things in terms of school safety, you want to keep training on those things, develop muscle memory, and making sure that we're keeping our students and our staff as safe as possible. So we're excited about that. It's been an excellent start, very busy. Starts of schools are very busy. Been at several sporting events. I'm excited to be at more as the schedule allows. But start of school is going very well.
Thank you very much. Off to invitations for statements and comments from the audience. And it looks like we do have one. Speakers are requested to complete the speaker identification form found at the board information table. Comments will typically be limited to 3 minutes depending on the number of speakers. The amount of time may be less, or the board may decide to suspend public comments to a future date. And we have Miss Zoe Castañez. You can step up to the podium.
Good evening, Dr. Christensen, Mr. Muniz, and the MF, or Menomonee Falls District Board, and to all who are present. First, I want to thank our school board and superintendent for all they do to enhance and protect our children's education and learning experience. As a parent of children that attend public school in Menomonee Falls, I feel blessed to be in a district that leads with intelligence, ethics, and logic. I came across some local news that shocked me a few weeks ago, entitled "Discrimination Complaint Filed Over Book Bans in Menomonee Falls School District," and this was from Wisconsin Public Radio. This was an article detailing books that were removed due to inappropriate content. Since reading this article and then reviewing the video of the related school board meeting, I have been speaking with other parents in the district, and actually I felt threatened by some of the comments in the article that conveyed desire to push personal ideology on the children in our school district. I'm referring to a particular quote in the article from another parent in our district, and I quote, "I want all kids to be able to absorb material that is representative of all people because it is what they're going to see in the real world. And I want all students to feel welcome at school and their families to be represented. How are we going to develop respect between all of our students at school, even if they don't always agree?" It's a fair question. With respect to this quote, I want students to feel welcome at school as well. But it's unclear if this is suggesting that some children in the school don't feel welcome, or if the comment was made out of fear without any factual basis. As a parent, it's my belief that our responsibility is to teach our children good manners and behaviors for successful socialization. There's a big difference between having respect for others and accepting another family's ideologies. As our country is one with many cultures and religions and beliefs, it's a nation that celebrates and respects differences. In fact, if we all think about our friends and family, it's quite common in this country to have relationships with people of different cultures, faiths, beliefs, even parenting methods. So some education comes from home, as it should. As parents, it's our responsibility to choose how to raise our children in terms of religion, beliefs, ideologies, ethics, and family dynamics. This responsibility comes with the accountability and the understanding that one family and its household dynamics are likely different from the next, and that's okay. This is the USA where we are allowed to be different. If anyone wants to live in a homogenous society where one religion or ideology is above all others, those countries exist, and it's not this country. As parents, it's understood that we do not send our children to school with the expectation that the teachers should raise our children in our stead. As such, there are some topics that just do not fit a public school education model. The books that were removed from the district libraries were these types of books. They were completely unrelated to the education offered in a public school. In fact, some of the books contain content that would be best kept in a restricted adult section of a public library, as the material contains both language of perverse and vulgar profanity. This kind of content has no place in our school district. It's not appropriate for children, and it's just usually found in movies that are rated R. They do not teach reading, writing, mathematics, history, science, or the arts. It's important to be logical, ethical, and sensible in our education, in our evaluation, of the curriculum in our schools, and to be sure that there is responsible and accountable vetting for all materials that are placed in an educational environment. I encourage all people, attendees, and parents to review the list of books that were removed if you have not done so already, because you will be a bit shocked at the content. In conclusion, just due to the nature and content of the books that were removed, it's very obvious that the complaint is baseless and ridiculous. It's clear there's no discrimination, and for any media source that wishes to twist the issue into a public rant, it's an issue of poor vetting for materials placed senselessly in a public school that have finally been reviewed using school policies and removed. These materials offer profanity, sexual content, and explicit language and themes that would warrant school suspension if the language was used by the children in the schools, and lawsuits from parents when kids come home saying they learned R-rated material from the school library. So as a community, let's continue to do our homework and support the policies that protect our schools and children. Thank you again, District School Board and Dr. Muniz, for all you do, and thank you for taking care of that problem.
Thank you. Next are our action items, vouchers payable.
I make a motion to approve vouchers payable through September 5th, 2024 in the amount of $1,545,967.58.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion is passed. Next is consent agenda items. Has everybody had a chance to view the items? Any questions, any discussion? Okay, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, this concludes our meeting. I need a motion to adjourn.
Future board agenda
Oh,
items.
I'm sorry. We always, future board agenda items, anybody?
I will list one thing. I know that we have a CE and Rec update coming at the next board meeting. So there's a lot of meetings going on between now and that. So we're looking forward to, there's been a little bit of a delay on that, but in a good way. So there'll be an update coming to the board at the next school board meeting on the CE and Rec and Riverside construction project.
Thank you. All right, we are now at the conclusion of the meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, this meeting's adjourned at 7:49.